What's up, guys? Gabe here with the TBSG podcast. We're on our 5th podcast coming, so we've gotten a little more experience, and we've gone over a lot in Shadowboxing by Joseph Rios, but today we want to relate it back to multimodal poetics and actual research articles, what they're talking about, saying about Shadowboxing. So Momina and Jose will get into that right now.
In Todd Erickson's article, Leaping Off the Page and Melding Modes, Erickson talks about how, in poetry, varied use of punctuation and capitalization is nothing new. A quick reminder of the common term, poetic license, as well as an invocation of E. E. Cummings and Emily Dickinson, might suffice to prove this, in that their grammatical errors actually serve to create or emphasize meaning. No doubt, we do our best to make language come alive, to give it its own energy, and we do this through the use of multi-modality.
So going off of what Jose was talking about in Todd Erickson's article, Joseph Rios also employs a lot of these multimodal forms in his poetry, especially in his book Shadowboxing. In a lot of his poems, he uses script form, where he will be writing his poem almost like a script, in which he has two speakers who are in a setting and they're having a conversation. And he uses his poetic license to really capture the moment by using these poetic modes and connect to his audience. He also uses a lot of Spanglish, which is a combination of Spanish and English, which is also another mode of poetry, which adds another dimension to his poems because it relates to a different sort of audience within his who are reading his poems. Another thing that Joseph Rios does is that he uses a lot of indentations and punctuation to emphasize certain words in his poetry. Sometimes he'll have poems that only emphasize one word, or the first line or the last line, and that'll really emphasize how and what he's saying.
I will now read a part of the poem Elegy with an X, a conversation between Ortega and Josefo. Act 2, Scene 1. Alfred, Barrows Hall, University of California.
The Chicano is the subject of Aslan, the cultural nation, but not the state, and not subject to capricious borderlines. It is not a state of being, but rather an act. Chicando, the progressive tense, and chicando, actively articulating self, the infinitive chicar meaning to play, to conflict, to work out dialogically, unfinalized versions of self. Yes, Josefo?
Profe, how does this relate to our poetry?
Josefo, you must understand this if you are to have even the most elementary understanding of our poetics.
Are there any books of Chicano poetics?
Yes, but only one.
Who wrote it?
Me. Kurt.
So Mo did a really good job earlier talking about the multimodal poetics and that concept. We really included that excerpt from Shadowboxing by Joseph Rios just to kind of further portray that the concept of multimodal poetics is very evident in the book. It was really hard to find articles on Shadowboxing itself, so we did the next best thing, and that was just, talk more about a really big concept in the book, and yeah.
Interesting. Unfortunately, we're now running short on time, so this will conclude this week's podcast. We hope you enjoyed our comments and responses to scholarly articles analyzing Joseph Rios and Shadowboxing. You'll hear from us again next week, but until then, have a good time, and we out. See ya.